From an investor standpoint, is enough of what you saw today, is it enough to get people excited about Apple stock?
So are the announcements today excited enough to give investors some enthusiasm around the stock? I think so, but to a degree. Well, of course, Apple didn't really make any major announcements or updates on their user base or the number of phones sold. So I don't know that there's going to be a big reaction from the update that didn't happen today. But I think what you can see is a real advancement in the product line from Apple. It does sort of match some of the previous updates that they've done. This is a mid-cycle phone upgrade, so it's not a new number version, but it's a new minor version. But Apple says that they replaced all the components inside. Of course, that there's a lot of new technology there, not only around the phone, but around the television, and of course around the iPad, which is clearly meant for enterprise use. All those things by themselves, I think, are pretty exciting. And I think, in general, investors should think about this as a thumbs up, but they do need to be cautious and wait to see how all these devices sort of sell in markets.
Let me ask you about some of the pricing points and what it means for margins. Particularly, let's start with the phones, where there really was no change in pricing. How do you read that? And also on the other side of the scale of things here was the new iPad, which is higher priced. Talk to me a little bit about what those two pricing points mean to you.
The two pricing points, the first question was around the iPhone, and that it basically remained the same pricing points and same configurations. I think Apple has found a sweet spot there with the price and the configuration, and they're going to stick with that. But also, there's a big change that's undergoing in the mobile services business. No longer are you getting phones on contract, but you're paying monthly. And I think Apple had to sort of live within those guidelines with what these carriers want to do. And not only is this change taking place in the US, but it's also changing around the world. And so Apple's not going to be able to sort of follow the old model where they can subsidize the price, but people are going to have to pay for it every month. And so they had to be really sensitive to that. The second question was about the price of the iPad Pro. That's a little bit higher price than the consumer version of the iPad. It's appropriately priced for business. Businesses can tend to afford a little bit more than consumer, but also at the same time, it's a productivity device, and businesses will pay that extra for having those features and capabilities that they didn't get in the devices that were clearly meant for only for consumers.
So how do the products that were introduced today change your outlook in terms of potential sales and revenue for Apple?
I think what we saw today is the logical next step that Apple's taking. Of course, if you read into all the rumors and everything that we saw leading up to the event, maybe we had a clue about that. But if we just sort of took a look at the event today and the freshness of the devices, they're entering two new markets with the iPad Pro and with the Apple TV. They're really expanding the capabilities in an attempt to be mass market with these devices. I think that's really important for the long-term success of Apple and the potential for revenues in the future. I don't necessarily think that we're going to see a bump in those revenues, especially in this quarter, because it's getting a little bit closer to the end for Apple. But in the coming quarters and into next year, I think that we're going to start to see some of these effects.